Hail, EC here, and today I want to talk about the Steam Deck versus Nintendo Switch 2 comparison. I'm not going to be talking about graphics, I'm going to actually be talking about the fact that the Steam Deck's success is actually a good thing for Nintendo. And this might sound like a bit of a weird topic to actually say in a video, because people have acted like the Steam Deck, Logitech G Cloud, Rogue Ally, these consoles are like the direct competition to the Nintendo Switch 2 because they're all handhelds. And I do see that comparison quite vividly. I do understand, obviously, it's a handheld console, it can be used to, play games in a handheld mode, and, I do see that comparison. However, I want to say that the success of these devices doesn't really correlate from, obviously, the brand of the device. It's more so based on what they actually do. These devices are all now allow people to play top tier AAA games on the go, and this is obviously a huge factor in why everyone wins in this regard. So, for example, the Steam Deck over its entire lifespan has sold about 3.7 to 4 million consoles based on the evidence I could find, whilst the Switch 2 has sold 3.5 million consoles within the first few days of it actually being on the market. That's actually quite a good comparison, for example, because obviously people are saying, I'm not going to buy a Switch 2, I'm going to buy a Steam Deck. Well, it turns out, obviously not as many people bought a Steam Deck as they claimed. Now, with the, I do want to preface as well, guys, I do have a Steam Deck and I have a Switch 2, so, I have an opinion, I have both, so there we go. I do feel that the Steam Deck success, and people talk about the Steam Deck, actually puts more pressure on Nintendo to perform. And the reason this is the case is because, obviously, think, if Valve can brag around, we have Cyberpunk 2077 running on the Steam Deck and it runs really well, it has great graphics, it runs perfectly, great performance and whatever, then that then gives Nintendo Nintendo a reason to try and get CD Projekt Red to then try and put Cyberpunk 2077 on Switch 2, make it run just as good, make it look just as good, and I feel that becomes a thing with obviously a lot more games. And that also then leads to obviously other developers who maybe don't put their games on the Steam Deck, or maybe don't put their games on the Switch 2. It gives Valve and Nintendo a reason to actually go out, talk to these developers, talk to these publishers, and get more games on their platforms. And it actually helps win. It gives it actually competition. But as I know, Nintendo hasn't really had much competition in the handheld space since the PSP, which was like 2004. And my argument here is quite simple. There's not really been anyone else in the handheld space that's really tried to go toe-to-toe with Nintendo since the PlayStation tried it. And the PSP was a success. PS Vita, not so much, although, Vita means Live Vita is actually a good little system, but it just didn't get the marketing, it didn't get the support it needed. But realistically, Valve could potentially be the next big rival for Nintendo in the handheld space. And same with all these other companies like Logitech and all that stuff. But I do feel that Nintendo benefits from having the Steam Deck on the market as a competitor, because that gives more reason to actually be competitive. It gives, more reasons to get more games on the platform, get more developers to, do sales on the platform. And everyone really wins in that regard, because then obviously gamers get more choice on where they can play their favourite games. Obviously, there are some games that you won't be able to play on each, because obviously I know some games would obviously require like the mouse functionality on the Steam Deck, or there's certain things on Steam Deck that, you couldn't do on Switch 2, and Switch 2 stuff you couldn't do on, obviously, like the motion controls, it wouldn't work on the Steam Deck. But I do feel that realistically both platforms can coexist, and they don't need to be directly compared. But I also feel like because they're like in the same space, it will benefit everyone around them, because obviously everyone can then go out, get one of these consoles, enjoy the games, and they can just talk about it, have a discussion. But obviously, as we know, on the internet, you can't have a healthy discussion with anything. You have to obviously, this one's better, reason here, and you never actually have an argument on why it's better. You just say it's better because that's your opinion. Hopefully, Nintendo and Valve, they can work together and stuff, and maybe we see Nintendo games on Steam Deck someday. I don't think we will, but we can hope for it. And I know people will say that, with the Steam Deck you can use as emulation. Yeah, I know you can use emulation on the Steam Deck, but from my understanding, it's with emulation, you need to actually know what you're doing to actually get it to really work. And to me, if I'm going to play a retro game on the Steam Deck, I'm probably just going to end up buying the game from Steam. It's kind of just easier and the best way to do it, really, because then you don't get a bad ROM file that then corrupts your system. But let me know what you guys think about this in the comments down below. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Do you think the Steam Deck and the Nintendo Switch 2 can coexist? Do you think it's actually beneficial to both parties to have the other one in the arena? Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. If you're new, make sure you subscribe, like, share, comment, turn notifications. I've been EC, and I'm signing out. Peace.